Hello, I'm Joan. I'm a Canadian family physician who also works as a restorative medical educator, facilitator, and coach. I create spaces that rehumanize the work of healthcare. I'm creating this podcast to remind myself, as well as anyone else working in a helping profession, that when you are working and caring for your human patients, you are the other human in the room. Hello there, healthcare humans. Thank you so much for coming back for another episode of The Other Human in the Room. So today I am sharing a conversation that I recorded with one of the first physician coaches that I ever worked with and learned from. And it's actually a recording that I did for her podcast. So if you have also listened to Dr. Sarah Smith's podcast, then this may be a repeat, but I know our audiences are probably not exactly the same. So I thought I would also share our same conversation over here. Just so you have a bit of background on her, Sarah is a family physician. She practices in Alberta, in Canada. She's like a rural family physician, and she's also the charting coach. And she has this really awesome course called Charting Champions. I have no affiliate, or I get no financial gain from talking about her course all the time. I'm just kind of obsessed with it because it was my gateway into this world of coaching and what's possible in terms of transforming humans' minds and bodies and lives, based on this online way we're all learning from each other, whether you listen to my podcast or take a course with me or do one-on-one coaching with me. I was introduced to it all through Sarah. And so I talk a bit about that on the story of how Charting Champions helped me, as well as, just more about my philosophy about how system change really happens. And she shares some really great pearls as well. So yeah, I just thought I'd say that up front so you're not confused why it seems like there's someone else hosting and then I'm the guest. It's because that's what happened. So I still hope you enjoy it greatly. I enjoyed this conversation so much with her. And the key thing I share in the podcast, and it is really one of the core things that I'm always sharing with everyone of you who's listening, is that big changes can start with one person. And it's not like pressure that you have to change everything yourself, but it's sort of the opposite of, in whatever ways you want to change and whatever things you want to do to make your work easier, better, more sustainable, more human in healthcare, that is glorious for your benefit and is also how the system changes. It's, in my opinion, always beneficial. If it's beneficial for you and helps you restore yourself and restore your humanity, that is going to have a side benefit to your patients, to your staff, to your colleagues, and then who, by the way, are the main people who make up your microsystem. And then that has a ripple effect. So it can be tough out there. I know the system is not great. I know pieces of it are definitely falling all the way apart. And this is what we can do when we're watching a system we may thought we'd be able to rely on crumble, is getting back to the basics of what can I do and what's one small thing I can shift about this day that will make my job a little lighter, a little easier. What can I let go of? What can I quiet quit? What can I invite in that I know is nourishing to me in order to make this possible? So with all of that, enjoy the conversation.
Well, hello everybody and welcome back. Today I have special guest coach and physician and friend and charting champion, Joan Chan. Welcome, Joan, Dr. Joan Chan, I should say. I'm going to let you introduce yourself and then we'll get stuck into your conversation and before and after story. Let's go.
Okay. I think I should have brought my Charting Champions mug because I have a mug.
You should have.
I'm very proud of it, honestly. I'm like, I am a charting champion. Anyways, hello, I am Joan Chan. I am a family physician who practices in Guelph, Ontario, in Canada. And I also work as a restorative medical educator and coach. What I say is that I help humans in healthcare make their experience of healthcare feel more human. It really connects well with work I was already doing previously, like in medical education in an institution, but this is work I do privately, offering workshops and coaching and that sort of thing. Yeah, I'm also a mom of two little kids and a husband. I'm not a husband. I am a wife of one husband. And yeah, I am a human who enjoys silly dance parties in the living room, RuPaul's Drag Race, long walks in the forest. That's me.
Perfect. Well, we are delighted to have you. So thank you. Thanks for the introduction. So let's hear about what was medicine like for you that made you go looking for ideas and solutions to make it better. So let's hear about what was it like for you as a family doc?
Yeah. Oh boy. Yeah, I think honestly, even like since I started practice, especially took over my own practice, I remember maybe like a year into having my own practice now, I think 8 years ago, I posted on like a local group being like, how do people not get burnt out doing this job? This job seems hard. And got like I had a little support group going. Like I've always been very interested in like how do we do this thing without totally losing our humanity and losing our sense of self in the process. But then certainly, the old pandemic kicked things up a notch. In part because when the pandemic was declared, I was halfway through my second pregnancy. And so just like a really intense time, a mat leave that was mostly by Zoom. And then when I got back to medicine, I really felt like I needed to do all the things in order to try and like stave off my sense of desperation and hopelessness that the pandemic was so terrible. So I immediately became the like MD lead of our local vaccine clinic. Like that's like how I used to cope, was by doing more and like just
Mhm.
doing the most.
Mhm.
And, it was kind of exhilarating for a time, but not shockingly, I got really burnt out. And one of the ways I knew I was burnt out, because like I was pretty disconnected from my emotions, but it was my charting. It was like I remember like summer 2021, like seeing patients and realizing I had forgotten to chart their last encounter the month before. My inbox was out of control. And it was in part because primary care has a lot of paperwork, but also like I was scheduling Zoom meetings over my lunch hour. Like I was really pretending I had Hermione's time turner when I did not, you know? And so that's when I'd heard about your course, Sarah, and I was like, there has to be something better than this. I joined Charting Champions, and like like module 1, when you're talking about how you chart after each encounter, and that's sort of like one of many centerpieces in your program, in your course. And like my brain was like, I can't, but then you like inspired me to try. And like it's been amazing. Like, and there was something about like taking control over this really painful part of my practice that then sparked this idea of like, what if I could change more than this part of my practice? Like, what if I could change anything I wanted about my practice? But like that pain point from prior was really just drowning in paperwork, drowning in also like resentment, a lot of resentment of my patients, a lot of, I mean, we're having like weird, difficult COVID vaccine conversations at that time, if you recall, and just like feeling yucky feelings I didn't want to feel towards my patients. I enjoy connecting with my patients and seeing them with fondness, and I was
Yeah.
having trouble with that. And
Yes.
so those were kind of the two pieces, like my connection with patients being so gone, and then paperwork just being absolutely out of control. That's
Yeah.
why I knew I needed help.
Yeah. What did resentment sound like in your head? So what were some of the kind of sentences your brain would say about your patients that you kind of noticed?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, I remember a patient came in and they had two other issues. And then they were like, oh, and then also, by the way, my knee's been hurting. And the thought in my head was like, I wasn't even resentful at the patient. I was resentful at his knee. I was like, seriously, knee? Are you serious? Like, hey, universe, how could you also give this guy a knee problem? Like, I was mad on his behalf, but mostly on my own behalf. And it was a lot of that, like, seriously. So either like seriously the audacity of a patient to whatever, or seriously at the universe to give too many people's sickness at the same time. I was just like, I just had all this responsibility. Like, if if half my practice were all sick at the same time, that meant it must be my job to care for all of them. Like, it was like this direct correlation, and then it just felt so heavy.
Mm.
So I'd
Yeah.
say that was a lot of it.
Yeah. What were your coping strategies like then? How would you manage in the day when you were feeling heavy, burdened, resentful? What would it look like if we were looking at you?
Like before,
Yeah.
yeah. I had been I've been in like therapy mostly for personal stuff, but like it would sometimes come up there. So I would, be kind of talking through stuff there, though not as often, honestly. Like, I was mostly focused on stuff in my personal life and would feel almost guilty speaking with someone who wasn't a physician about like resentment against my patients as if they were going to judge me. So, like, it was kind of an outlet, but kind of not, to be
Yeah.
honest.
Interesting.
And feeling like they didn't really understand. And then, exercise, like, moving my body, that was something that has often been a way that I can cope. Venting, I had, like, a group chat going with some of my local colleagues that was called "Screaming into the Void," and we would all just be like, "Ah, pandemic," and, like, that was very cathartic, but then didn't move things. Like, it was useful in the moment to, like, get some of the resentment out, but then I was still stuck feeling bad and, like, not looking forward to seeing the patient next time. I just was feeling yucky. So, yeah, I think those are some of the main ways.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
find that so interesting that the group chat's called "Screaming into the Void."
Yeah.
Did was that done in person as well within the clinical day, or was it just on that online forum?
I would say that it was mainly that online form. I was still part, though it was by Zoom at this point, of this like other support group that myself and another clinician had kind of started, and it evolved over time. But I found it hard to get there, and that was nice to sort of share with each other in like a peer support way. Day to day, yeah. Like, I mean, I work with five other awesome physicians, and we would vent to each other. Though at that point, it was still so much more disconnected because we were all like hiding from each other, hoping not to give each other COVID. Like, we were all like behind all these masks. I mean, we're still behind masks, but, like, we weren't sitting in the same rooms. If
Yes.
possible, more people were working from home. Like, it was maybe
Yes.
shifting a bit by that point, but everything felt weird. Like,
Yes.
being with other people didn't feel fully safe, so then it was hard to connect even with colleagues at that
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, so interesting. And when were you getting the work done? So when did this spill into? What was the consequence for the rest of your life?
Oh, well, definitely charting every evening. I just sort of thought that's how it was gonna go. Like, I used to pre-kids just stay at my clinic, and my, like, boundary was, like, I have to get all my charting done before I leave, and then I would just be there till 7 or something or later. But then with kids, you wanna get home, and so then it was like, at first it was an hour of charting and maybe some inboxes, and then it was, like, 2, maybe 3 hours, and I wouldn't even get all the charting done. Like, I would just get half of it done. Like, it was really snowballing that way. I don't think I ever allowed myself to let it spill into weekends, so for whatever, that was able to remain a boundary. But then, like, my non-clinical, well, not non-patient facing days, like, Mondays, the whole day could be spent trying to catch up and then feeling desperation, so going and watching Netflix instead, and then going back, like, all those, like, procrastination techniques. So, yeah, it was definitely spilling over. And then, like I said, one of my main coping strategies is to do the most. So then I, like, would feel bad about myself, so I'd join another committee or board or whatever,
Mm.
which didn't
So
help.
interesting. And you're not alone there. I think that I've heard that quite a number of times from the people who are interviewed here that the doing is how do I fix bad I feel about the world is I mustn't be doing enough.
Yes, for sure. And I just wanna make an impact, and sort of, like, it feels nice to feel, like, important. And, I at one point I was on 3 different boards of, like, local things, and it feels, like, kinda neat to be, like, the physician in the room, and I was, like, offering insight that they thought was valuable, I thought was valuable, and so I'm like, "Look how valuable I am, making a difference." But then there's, like, not enough time to sleep and be a human, so that wasn't as good.
Yeah, yeah. That's right. And then we wake up and realize it's a committee. It's not really who we are.
No, so many committees, Sarah.
All right. So then tell us about the transition. So what were you noticing as you transitioned into doing something different and having a different experience?
Yeah. Well, I started listening to the modules and, the first thing I did tackle was like, how can I actually like see a patient, close the chart, as you say? And I really didn't know if I could do it. But like you say, it's this impossible goal. Let's go for it. I'd started listening to some other coaching stuff and was getting the sense of like, oh, like I can offer myself and my brain this challenge and just like see how it goes. And what happens if I just don't give up? And what if I get really intense about it? I know how to get intense about a thing, okay? But I really never applied it to like something that was so serving to me.
Yes.
And so I did that for a bit and got into a rhythm of it and saw the results probably within like a month or so, just like, let's go, let's do it. I was like, at first, I was very intense about it. Like, I was tracking the exact times I was coming in and out of rooms. How long did it take me to actually finish a chart? And all of that, I think I needed at the beginning, even just to prove to myself, look, it doesn't take that long to close a chart. Look, I can do it, you know? And so then that just sparked this like, what else could I do? If you know Encanto, I really like that song in there because it's like, what else could I do as I've begun? And so it's like, what else could I do with my inbox? What else could I do even with my time? Like, then it really started to shift pretty quickly. I realized I wanted to offer this kind of coaching and this kind of inspiration to others. So doing certifications, that sort of thing. It was a pretty fundamental shift. Like, I think the main thing, both your course and some other coaching I received, is like, instead of feeling like life is happening to me, which it is to a certain extent. It's not like I'm in control of my life. Like, life is happening, but as
Yes.
if then I had then no choice of what to do with it. I really lived and like understood on like a real experiential level that I can then respond in a way and create something that I want with my life. It won't always be the exact plan I set out, but if I just keep going and keep finding my way and grounding myself in what I know I need, that ended up serving me and my patients. It ended up serving me and my staff. And so then it was like, what else could I do? Like, what else could I shift? I've done a ton of things now with my clinic, like shifting my hours. Recently, I've hired 2 nurse practitioners to take over some of my hours. Like, I'm really trying to think. I love the name of your podcast being, like, sustainable clinical medicine. I just think the way that we've been trained and the way it's set up where it's, like, 1 doctor for, like, 1,000 patients, and so all those patients are just screwed if you're sick or your family's sick, that's a terrible system.
It's a terrible design. Yeah.
Why? Why? Did they not expect that person to be a human? I guess they used to, like, older white male with a wife, but even, like, that older white male was probably got sick sometimes, like, what were we thinking? And so I'm just trying to, like, how do I duplicate myself? How do I make myself more replaceable? How do I actually make it so that truly systemically, like, I can work on my personal guilt feelings, and I have, but, like, I can look at my practice and say, "Hey, my patients actually are taken care of even when I'm on vacation. My patients are taken care of sufficiently even when I'm sick," you know? So
Yes.
that's what I've been, like, tweaking ever since then.
Nice. Nice. Good. One of the things I love about what you're doing right now is and we'll talk about, so your podcast is The Other Human in the Room.
Yeah.
And you're not talking about the patient. So tell us about that journey and your insights into that piece of it.
Yeah, that was I think I've been thinking about what it is to be, like, a human who cares for other humans for a long time. Like, I think that's, like, part of that initial support group I set up, everything along the way. I've been a personal development junkie, you could say,
Yes.
for a long time of just like,
Yes.
how do we do this thing as like personally for myself? And then it always felt bizarre and became increasingly bizarre how like the way we're trained is to just pretend you're not a human and really like just sort of think in terms of guidelines and rules and like we're all supposed to be the same, and the face we're supposed to present our patients are all supposed to be the same, and how dehumanizing that is. And so I really wanted I also just really love podcasts. So I had this dream of like, what if there's a podcast where we got to talk about like all the weird and real things it is to be the other human in this room. So like, of course, patients are humans, and that's actually really important to remember. And the reasons that it's sometimes hard for us to remember that is because we're also humans. And so no one has to be the bad guy, like often, like I said, I was feeling so resentful of my patients, like they were attacking me personally. But really what was attacking like both of us was, a system that wasn't set up for anyone to feel human, and a bunch of like what I call inhuman stories that I'd been conditioned to believe. Like, I'm not allowed to make mistakes. I have to know every answer. I have to perform in a certain way. I have to make each of my patients happy all the time. Like, I had all these shoulds and have tos running inside of me, extremely dehumanizing for me, extremely disconnecting in terms of how to like can't connect with the patient when you're just like over here basically in a permanent OSCE, like permanently trying to like, please the examiner in the room that's not in there anymore,
Mhm.
like just trying to do your best. And I just wanted to talk about how that just like isn't real. Like even things like, yeah, so when you make mistakes, when you don't know what to say, like I don't think I've done this podcast yet, but I want to talk about like in an episode of like what happens when you just start blushing with the patient. Like I want to talk about all the things that are like real that happen to us,
Yeah.
only if only just to make them feel more real for me
Yeah.
and remind me that that is actually good and actually helpful to rehumanize myself and to accept my full humanity. That is, it makes it easier for me to do my job. It makes it easier for me to connect with patients, both like through modeling, but also like that's the level on which we can connect is when we are both feeling more human. So that, and actually that's the work I love doing the most, say like with coaching clients or in workshops. Like I've been really enjoying kind of being like a relationship coach, but the relationship is you and your patient, and like what's breaking down between you, and how can we help you reconnect those pieces. Because like people want, it's not just that they want to be liked by their patients, but like people really crave that genuine satisfying like connection with patients. And we can't do it if we think we're supposed to perform for the invisible examiner in the room, you
Mhm.
know? So that's what that whole journey's been about, and it's been so fun. And yeah.
Mm. I love that. So this is when we think about thought leadership, this is where um, you're really taking that experience that you're having and helping to define it and teach it to others. And in a way that helps them create a more lived experience of medicine that is not the constant taking and trapped, but
Yes.
more of the what you came into it for. I love that so much for you and for the people you work with.
Me too. It's the best. That's like the thing I've really learned the most. I I draw a lot of inspiration from this change theory in this sort of book and like series of, it's like podcasts and literary works, but it's called Emergent Strategy. It's like this theory about how you can direct change in the world, that comes out of like social justice work, like climate change activism, like anti-racism activism. And so I stumbled upon this book and this idea. One of the ideas from this theory is like, you know, if you want to make a big change, if you want a whole system to change, the big is the reflection of the small. So an example they give in that book when they talk about like politics is like, we all want democracy to look different, but how often do we actually practice the kind of democracy we want to see in our personal lives? And that idea that like what we do with ourselves, with our own relationship to ourselves, with ourselves personally, this sort of wellness, personal development, like as if it's in a separate box from the work we could do to change the system. This really helped me see like, no, the work you do with yourself to help yourself feel better, prioritizing what you need in order for your job to feel good to you, that is the kind of change we need in a system. Not
Hmm.
first of all, because you'll feel happy. And when people are happy, they like, show up in a different way at work and are kinder to each other. But like
Yeah.
literally, that's actually going to end up feeling more humane for patients. Like
Yes.
it's more efficient because it's a fuel that we can use to do more things in a way that feels better to us. Like it kind of blew my mind when I first read it. And it's also like way easier because then I don't have to think about what kind of person I have to be in one room or another. I can just be me everywhere and
Yeah.
trust that that is good enough, you know?
Yeah, that's wonderful because I don't think that many of us have that experience where we are ourselves in every situation. We've learned how to be guarded of ourselves as we went through medical school, always looking for how this person's trying to hurt, harm, shame me, judge me. That part of our medical school training, even though it's part of that almost apprenticeship model where we're taught how to look the same, how to talk the same, how to use the same literature. I agree with you on all of those pieces. And then working our way back to our humanity and knowing that we can't change the system quickly, but we can change the experience we're having right now in medicine.
Yeah, exactly. And that actually then changes the system.
That then changes the system because we want and expect to be treated as humans. Love
That's
it.
it. Like, if we all just that term quiet quitting? I don't know if I'm,
Yes.
like, appropriated in a weird way, but I'm, like, really into it where, for myself, anytime I'm like, "But I'll get in trouble if I don't blah, blah, follow this guideline to the letter with every person, even though it doesn't make sense for me or this literal human in front of me. I'm gonna get in trouble." Like, that it's a refrain I still hear in my head, but I now know to, like, say, "I see you, thought you're gonna get in trouble," and just, like, put it down, give it some love, but put it down because, like, it's not serving us. And that's, like, I, like, the idea that there's someone always watching us, that I don't like I think we got it from our training, right? And we got it
Yes.
from, well, previously being watched, and also, like, the messages we get about, like, what will the college say? What if you get sued? Like, these sort of, like, boogeymans in the room with you. But the truth is, like, if you are showing up best you can with the knowledge you have and the experience you have. And especially if you're showing up in a way where you have cultivated a trusting relationship with yourself and your brain and your knowledge and the other human that's like in front of you. In my opinion, that will always end up with the best outcome. I'm not saying it will always end up with like a perfect outcome, like bad things happen all the time. But even if you look at the literature, like why do patients choose to sue or not? It depends on the quality of connection with their clinician. Like when you look at what actually even mitigates some of the stuff that we are fearful will happen, it is about dropping the masks and actually just being connected and present with the patient and not thinking you have to do X, Y, Z according to some outside standard,
Hmm.
you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And I get the opinion about that a lot of physicians say, well, I am going to be looked at. My admin is going to read my chart. My college is reading my chart. For some of the graduates, for instance, that I've looked after in Manitoba, they have got every chart is being read. I'm like, yes. And, and, right.
Mhm.
Yes, of course they are. And what is that for? Who is it for? Us doing work in real time, looking after us within this experience is giving us the most accurate right now, and they're not out to try and get rid of you. You are still
Yes.
doing great work in that room. Yeah.
That really bums me out that people have that experience. That's like so I'm like, "Manitoba, I'm so sorry." But and because I know what it feels like, even without literal people monitoring me, it feels like, you go into scarcity mode, you go into survival brain, right? That's when you don't do your best work, which is the
Yeah.
tragic irony of all of these, like, outcome metrics that end up being shamey for people. And like you said, like, okay, so if they actually wanted to monitor everyone's charts for the purpose of kicking everyone out of medicine, that's a bad idea because there's not enough clinicians as it is. So they should change how they're doing their job. And
Yeah.
so really like owning the value that we have. Like, how does a
Mhm,
healthcare system operate without healthcare professionals? It maybe feels like part of the systems are really asking that question and trying
mm,
to figure that out. But in the meantime, the work that I know I can do, the work that I know matters to me, that feels good to me, that I see making a difference for my patient, I'm just only ever going to prioritize that. And
mhm,
then if someone tells me I was supposed to write a certain thing or do a certain thing, I'm going to say, thank you for your opinion. And I'm going to continue to do what actually makes an impact, which is connecting with my patients and prioritizing what they want.
mhm. Yeah, when we're talking about the physicians who are getting their charts read, I'm like, that's fantastic because it's not like you're going to get 20 years down the road and be told, now you're doing it wrong. You're like, you're getting that immediate feedback. It's fantastic. Like just having that understanding that this nothing's gone wrong,
Yeah.
not out to get you. They're not out to make you, go away. I think that's where we immediately come from when we're having that confrontation or external judgment is we make it mean, well, there's something wrong with me when that happens. Rather than this is just the experience of the world that they are going to be looking at your charts, that your patients get to read your charts, your admin will be reading your charts, and what else? How do you want to feel even when they're going to be looking at your charts, reading your charts, giving you feedback? Notice when your brain thinks they want to get me, they want me to leave, they're going to throw me out, and say, but what else could this mean? Maybe it means they're going to read the words that I put in a chart.
Yeah.
And it's nothing to do with trying to get rid of me, think I'm bad, any of those sentences that we can start to just notice that we're having about
Mm.
that experience. Yeah.
That's so good. Because, like, really, like, even what we value in clinicians that we see, or, when you're like, wow, like, I really value going to that physician. Does anyone say, like, in casual conversation, like, they're the best documenter? That's why. Like, when on Rate MD, is that the thing? Maybe there's some, of course, there's some extraneous case, but, like, really, like, it's useful if there's like a especially if they have some helpful strategy, like, let's filter through anything helpful in there, and if it's actually like, when I listen to what they say, I'm actually quite happy with how I'm doing it. If they have suggestions about how to fold what they're asking me to do in a very simple way into my workflow, I'm willing to entertain it. If they're asking me to do something that's actually gonna make it harder or slower for me to do my work, I might need 10 reminders plus before I and I think that's how you change the system. Like, it's so funny being actually in some of these, like, committee meetings and doing, like, the higher level system work because, like, a conversation that happens a lot in those rooms is like, "How do we get front-facing physician clinicians to change? Like, how do we engage them to and, like, really often what's meant, understandably, is like they see something that maybe is in need of the whole system, and they're like, "How do we, like, nudge everyone in a certain behavior direction?" And, like, the joke is that physicians, and I'm sure all clinicians are, like, trying to change them is like trying to herd cats. Like, we're already, actually known as being quite difficult to manage. So if you wanna, like, lean into that about things, say there's something about your administration or some guideline that's just come through that you're like, if I document the way they say, or if I have to pull in every patient with this risk factor to do this very elaborate spreadsheet, I literally would have no time to do anything else. You could just be like, I'm going to be bad at that. They're going to have to figure out another way. I'm going to quiet quit that immediately, right? Going back to that. Like, because, there's that study where it's like, what is it? Like, it would take 27 hours in a
Yes.
24-hour day to
Yes.
follow all the guidelines that primary care has to follow. Like,
That's right.
the job, if we present it in that, like, must do all the things that the external people say, like, it's
Yes.
literally impossible.
Yes.
So that's
Yes.
just freeing.
27 out of 24 hours.
That's so, like, freeing, actually.
Mhm.
We'll never do all the things. So what do I
Yes.
wanna do? What makes a difference in my life, in the life of my patients? Like, let's just start there.
That's right. Yep. Yep. Love it. Okay, so let's hear the three things that you would say to those of people listening who are just in this beginnings of wanting to create something, a different experience of medicine for themselves. What are you finding is helpful for the people you work with or for yourself? What do you think you'd say?
Yeah, I think focusing in. on the thing that's really ruining your life the most. Like the thing that's really got you tears in your eyes, whatever it is. Like if it's paperwork, if it's that one patient, if it's too many hours, if you just need a vacation, like, and really just focusing in on that one aspect and getting the support you need, courses, coaches, friends, whatever, to show your brain that it's possible to make a change about something that right now you probably feel pretty trapped and stuck in. Like the power of knowing that none of this can trap us is huge. And so you might as well choose the thing that you hate the most, you know? So I would say that's a good beginning. Another piece of it is remember that you're a human being with a human body. I have really learned a lot from teachers who talk about embodiment work, practices that help reconnect us to the fact that we are human beings with human bodies. Whether you're doing reading about that or like doing practices like some like yoga or examples like that, but in a way where you are reminded that you are like a living form with cells and like running through your veins, and feeling the experience of that. That has been extremely grounding for me, and especially in relationship to emotion. So that emotion is a piece of what it means to be a human being with a human body, and understanding and really practicing feeling emotion as a piece of what it means to be human. That has been probably the number one game changer for me, actually. It feels a bit sticky to describe even though I do it all the time because, like, our everyday language doesn't really talk about emotions that way, but, like,
Yeah.
a practical thing that once I kind of learned about emotions and the fact that all they are sensations in our body, is I would, like, repeat that to myself. So, like, if I was in a room with a patient and I was feeling really flustered or anxious, and I used to think that was a problem, but instead I would repeat to myself, like, "All that's happening are sensations in my body. This is how it feels to be a human in the room." Like, I would just be like, "This is how it's supposed to feel, that nothing's gone wrong." Like, those sorts of things. That's a very practical thing that even if you're maybe not ready to, like, set a goal and make a change, you
Yeah.
could start shifting your experience of medicine simply by creating a different relationship with your emotions and your bodily self.
Yeah.
And you said 3? I feel like that's
Yeah.
secretly 3. What else is there? Get a coach. I mean, that seems very pat, but, like, I think beyond get a coach, what I really mean is get support. Like, the system as it's designed now and, like, the dominant messages of society are that you're supposed to do it all on your own, and especially those of us that go into medicine, I think we often are afraid to be vulnerable. So, like, whether it's your partner or a friend or it is a therapist or a coach or whatever, finding someone that you can practice being human with that you know will be safe to just accept and hear your story, that is also transformative. So, if the first two examples already feel too far removed because they involve you kind of changing something in your day to day, just starting with like, well, who's another human who I can practice humaning with? That is so enriching. And it will allow you to have sort of the strength and perspective you need to do the rest.
Yeah, it's so true. This is part of that trauma of medicine, which we can talk about on another podcast, but that experience that you're having where if you are feeling alone, if nobody else sees what's happening in your day to day, if nobody's in there walking with you day to day, that increases your risk. That loneliness is because, of course, when you're feeling vulnerable or ashamed or tired or scared or exhausted, you want to hide yourself away. And that is the opposite of what keeps you safe.
Yeah.
So, identifying the people in your life who you can be vulnerable with, who you can say, "Hey, I'm having a really hard time," or "I haven't slept and I need to say no to this shift," is so important that you are not alone, and that loneliness or removing or separating yourself is not helpful. We want you back in the crowd with all of us who are also humans, who also have been there, done that, know that we're all tired and exhausted, and we want to hear you whine at us.
Yes.
Honestly, truly. Do not do medicine alone. It is dangerous to do by yourself.
Oh, 100%. And like it's been amazing like since I've started talking more openly about my experience in medicine, like everyone's like I thought I was the only one, like kind of they're almost clichés now. It's like I thought I was the only one who struggled with this or like colleagues or clients will be like I have this thing to confess and then they confess that they have like perfectionistic thoughts or like something that like everybody has and they're like this
Mhm.
I must be your worst case and I'm like I don't even know how to gauge worst best case, but like we're the same. Like, I say all of them, like, "Me too." You know, I'm not, like, pretending to be some, like, higher healed being or something weird. Like, the point is that everything that's going on in your brain is definitely going on in someone else's brain because 'cause we've all been swimming in the same, like you said, traumatic, really
Yeah.
harsh shame-based, like,
Yes.
system. And
Yes.
the most, like, evil message in there is that it's individual and that if you are struggling, it's on you and it's your fault. That's, like,
That's right.
so toxic, and so I just love what
Yes.
you just said. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, go find your friends.
Go
Go
find your
find
friends.
someone else to talk to, and preferably an actual human. I
Mhm.
mean, online groups, I think, have really changed the feeling of community for physicians, but at the same time, you can still be suffering badly online. And so having other humans to actually talk to is super important. So find your people,
Yes.
find your help, find your I love that message, Joan. That's really, really helpful, I think, to the people listening. So anything we did not cover that you would like to share?
What else? I don't think so. I think, well, I just want to thank you again, Sarah, like on a recording, just because the work that you've done, like, has impacted my life. Like, I really can never shut up about charting champions. It's like, there's no affiliate. I just am like obsessed with how the way that you applied like the coaching stuff to charting makes it so like accessible to really consider that it's possible to shift how we approach paperwork and you personally in what you've done have had just a major impact on me and my life and so thank you, that's the thing I want to say.
Well, I'm delighted to have helped. So how can people find you before we head off for today?
Yes, so my website is joanchanmd.com and I'm also on Instagram and Twitter and TikTok, god help me, at Joan M Joan Chan MD. So the same
Yeah.
thing, at Joan Chan MD and all of those. And then I have a podcast as well, the other human in the room, and you can find that wherever podcasts usually listen to, including YouTube. And yeah, that's me.
Fantastic. Well, have a wonderful week, everybody. Thank you.
Hey there, healthcare humans. I want to invite you to sign up for my course, How to Stop Worrying About Your Patients. It's a free 5-day email course delivered right to your inbox where I teach you why worrying is optional, that it's not actually helpful for your patients, and that it's possible to reclaim your brain from worry and start enjoying your life in and outside of medicine. Go to joanchanmd.com/course to sign up now. I'll see you in your inbox.